It's a good day to brew, baby. What is up, YouTube? It's your boy Millzy, back with Hometown Commander for another Millzy Brews episode. I'm really excited for this one. This is another comment requested video. I love doing the comment requests, so if you guys have any requests for commanders you want to see me build, throw them down in the comments below. Like, comment, subscribe. If you're interested in just the deck tech for this deck, I'm going to put a link down in the description so you can see just the final deck tech. But if you want to take the ride with me, stick around. We're going to do it. Last thing I'm going to do, because I realize I've been forgetting it, down in the comments, code hometown, rogueenergy.com, 10% off. If you guys like caffeine drinks and you want to try to avoid the sugar, I've been using Rogue Energy for a while. It's a product I love, and I recommend it. G Fuel and other those companies are great as well, but Rogue has some really great flavors. So if that's something you're interested in, check it down. But let's get to it. Zur Eternal Schemer. I have to admit, this is a commander that when Dominaria United came out, I was very interested in. I think the big problem for me was I'm in the process of finishing up my Alayla Artful Provocateur deck, which you can see a deck tech for over on the channel. And I felt like in too many ways Zur was going to be too close to Alayla. Like Zur has a great slot in that deck. And I was kind of worried that maybe if I built this deck it would be too similar, but over the last few weeks, the more I think about Zur, the more I'm realizing that Alayla kind of rides that fine line between artifacts and enchantments, whereas I think Zur kind of rides completely into the enchantments, right? Because we want to take advantage of its top ability, giving all of our enchantment creatures Death Touch, Lifelink, and Hexproof. But we also want to give all use that bottom ability to just make all of our relevant enchantments into creatures as well. So I have a lot of interesting ideas for Zur. I'm excited to see if it'll work. I've also had a lot of good success using Zur in my 5-color shrines list, as most of the, of course, all of your shrines and then the shrine tokens you make with Goshintai are all enchantment creatures. I've had a lot of fun. Zur has helped me out a ton closing games there. But okay, Esper enchantments. So a lot of the times you see enchantress decks or enchantment decks playing in green and white, just because green and white tend to have the best enchantments in that color combination, tend to do the best for overall value. So we're going to lose some of the natural ramp that we get out of green, but we're going to pick up a lot of card draw and a lot of other things in blue, and then some cool things in black. So let's talk about what we want to play. I think the best kind of slam dunk where you want to get to for Zur's Hallowed Haunting. I think this is the card that, like, probably no matter where you're going with Zur, this is probably the card that pays you off the most. It says as long as you control 7 or more enchantments, creatures you control have flying and vigilance. And then whenever you cast an enchantment spell, create a white cleric creature token with this creature's power and toughness are equal to the number of spirits you control. So basically, every time we get an enchantment, we get a spirit, and then those spirits are XXs, where X is the number of spirits we control, and we're basically just going to build an army of spirits that way. This is one of my favorite cards that's been spoiled over the last year or so, and I will force this into every enchantment deck I can until the end of time. But I think one of the other cards that came out in that set with it that fits really well is Catilda. Catilda on the front side, its power and toughness equal to the number of spirits or enchantments you control. But on the back side, we get to enchant a creature with it, and that creature has flying, lifelink, and protection from vampires, and it gets +X+X, where X is the number of creatures you control, permanents you control that are spirits or enchantments. So I feel like Catilda is one of those cards that like really fits this Hallowed Haunting idea. But since we're going to be playing a lot of enchantments anyway, I feel like Catilda is also kind of a boss monster of sword. It's another piece in our deck that's going to do what we want it to do. I think we pretty clearly want to play things like Ethereal Armor, which gives a creature +1/+1 for each enchantment you control in first strike. Things like All That Glitters, which gives a creature +1/+1 for each artifact and enchantment we control. I feel like these are the kind of things we want to run as well. Eventually, we're gonna want to end the game. And the cool part about Zur, if we make an enchantment a creature and then use one of these to buff it up, it's even better. Now, the cool part about Zur's second ability is That doesn't end when Zur leaves the battlefield. So basically, as soon as we make an enchantment a creature, it's always a creature. Now, the downside is once that enchantment becomes a creature, then it can be board wiped. So we're going to have to add a little bit of protection there. But I think one of our other slam dunk enchantments we really want is something like Sigil of the Empty Throne. 3 double white. Whenever you cast an enchantment spell, make a 4/4 angel. This is in here for 2 reasons. 1, it's going to help gum up the board, give us lots of creatures. But 2, we can make it into a 5/5 with Zur. And that's going to be really helpful when it comes to dealing with creature heavy decks and things like that. So I think that that's pretty helpful as well. I think we're going to be going for a lot of these enchantment tropes. It's just going to be finding a way to kind of push it all together. So like I said before, we're not in green, so we don't have access to fun ramps. So we need to play some things to ramp. First off, Smothering Tithe. I love the idea of trying Stony Silence in this deck. That's an enchantment that shuts off artifacts. I apologize. Shuts off the activated abilities of artifacts. I think it could be really good. The only problem with Stony Silence is we then can't play any mana artifacts to help us ramp if that's the case. So Stony Silence is going to be kind of a question mark for the moment as we decide, is that really what we want to do? I think Rhystic Study becomes a must. We need a way to draw cards, and Rhystic Study is just a great way to do that. The thing that kind of makes me weary to play Stony Silence is something like Black Market Connections. This is an enchantment that can give us a treasure every turn for a life. And I just feel like the treasures are going to become important in the Esper colors to help us ramp on mana. And again, the great part about Black Market Connections is it's an enchantment, which means we get all the benefit off of it, and we get to grow off of it, which I think becomes important in the long run. Okay, so I think we'll end up filling out the enchantments later. What I want to do is take a look at enchantment creatures. What enchantment creatures we can run in our deck, right? Because they fit double duty. They're creatures, right? And they're also enchantments, so they're going to benefit from Zur's ability. And remember, Zur's only 3, so we can get Zur down hopefully pretty quickly. And so that's this Scryfall Search. And then this Scryfall Search is an ability called Constellation. It says whenever an enchantment enters the battlefield under your control, do X. So I think Constellation is going to come pretty popular in this deck. It's not going to be a ton of creatures with Constellation, but I think there's going to be a few that are really important. So let's talk through them. The first I think is a slam dunk in most enchantment decks is Archons of Sun's Grace. It's a 3/4 in the air for 4. Flying lifelink, and then whenever an enchantment comes in, we make Pegasus creature tokens, and those Pegasus creatures have lifelink. It's just one of those cards that if we can get it down and make it stick, it's going to help us protect ourselves, and that lifelink is going to go probably a long way. So I really, really like that one. Agent of Erebos seems interesting. I don't know that I'm that worried about hosing graveyard decks, but I understand why it's popular. Daxos' Torment kind of has me intrigued. When there's the battlefield under your control, whenever another enchantment enters, it becomes a 5/5 demon with flying and haste until end of turn. That seems like it could be kind of interesting. To get a creature out of nowhere. I don't love it yet, but I think that's kind of interesting. Doomwake Giant is something, of course, that I think is really, really great. Whenever it or another enchantment enters the battlefield, creatures your opponent's control get -1/-1 till end of turn. So we're basically just going to start nuking our opponent's boards, and if we can play a couple little enchantments in one turn, well then we're going to help wipe our opponent's board down. The cool part there is then anything that's naturally an enchantment creature is going to already get this ability to have Death Touch, Lifelink, and Hexproof. So it's going to make these even harder to get off the battlefield, of course, besides board wipe removal. And like I said, we'll talk about that as we get into the sorceries and instants. Deathbringer Lampids gives something Intimidate, which is kind of interesting. Gains Double Strike. Grim Guardian, whenever something enters under the battlefield, each of our opponents lose a life. That's going to become really important to help kind of chunk out our opponents over time. I think that's going to be pretty good. Harvest Guard All Seeds, preventing damage to a creature. Okay. Pious Wayfarer, giving a creature +1/+1 until end of turn, which is okay. I don't think it's good enough. I kind of like the idea of protein thaumaturge. Thaumaturge? Whenever an enchantment enters the battlefield under your control, you may have this become a copy of another target creature, except it has this ability. This is really good, especially with things like Doomwake Giant and Grim Guardian, because they're not legendary. So that can kind of double up on these abilities, double up on Archon of Sun's Grace, double up on some other abilities. So I think that's going to become really good. I don't think we really need the mill from Sage of Mysteries. Skybind's kind of a blink, but I don't think we really need that. Discarding a card, I like the idea of it, but 6 mana is kind of expensive. Underworld Coinsmith seems interesting. Whenever it or another enchantment enters the battlefield under control, you gain a life, and you can pay a life to make each opponent lose a life. It's kind of interesting. I just worry that it's not going to end up doing us enough good. Okay, so we found a couple cool creatures here, but I think if you went over to Zer's EDH rec page, I'm sure these couple creatures are high up on the list, but that's okay. My intention on this series is always to walk you through why we're adding things in and not just adding things in. As much as I agree that adding things in is important, I want to make sure that all of the cards we're adding fit this kind of theme that we're going on. Okay, now we're going right into enchantment creatures. The first ones that we need to talk about are the gods, right? The Theros gods. All of these are enchantments and creatures, and so for that reason, they could be pretty important. So let's go through them. The first is Thassa Deep Dwelling. I was kind of intrigued by Thassa as I was sitting here thinking about this, because you could bounce something like Doomwake Giant at your end step and get another activation of it, or bounce another creature and get another activation of it. And with this constellation, we could bounce enchantment creatures and get another trigger of all of them. So I think Thassa could definitely be interesting. It's definitely something to consider. Heliod Suncrown, if we want to go anywhere near life gain, this is one of the better ones for that. Putting +1/+1 counters on things and giving things lifelink. I think Heliod's worth running probably no matter what. We just have to decide if we're going to really pay off. Heliod with the life gain. The archetypes seem like kind of interesting cards because they're enchantments, which means Zerg can protect them, but also they're going to give us these abilities. Archetype of Imagination says creatures you control have flying, and creatures your opponents control lose flying and can't have or gain flying. This could be kind of interesting because then it pushes all of these tokens, and we're going to put in a couple of other enchantments to make tokens, probably. It seems like a great, easy way to kind of get ourselves some advantage on the board. Archetype of Imagination seems like it'd be really good to do that for us. Daxos is something that seems kind of interesting. Whenever another creature you control enters the battlefield or dies, you gain a life. So that's good, especially if we're going to go for this. If we want to go for more of a tokens route, which I just have a gut feeling is going to get us the best. It's going to get us the best end game of all of them. Daxos, I feel like, could be really good because of that gaining life. It's also an enchantment, so it's going to be protected by Zur, and I'm also realizing it gives all of them lifelink, which makes Heliod even better because we're going to have that natural life gain started. Athreos is probably the real question mark. I love the idea of Athreos, given that it's only 3 mana. I feel like it's going to be easy to get down. It says whenever another creature you own dies, return it to your hand unless target opponent pays 3 life. Well, remember, if we make an enchantment a creature, this is going to go off more often. And then we can go ahead and just play ways to get cards back to our hand that way. So I like Athreos. All Seed of Life's Bounty is a great little enchantment. It'll ping our constellation when it comes in. And then we can pay 1 to give something protection of a color of our choice. Unfortunately, it still won't protect it from a board wipe, but it could protect it. If we have a really big Zur, for example, hopped up on all these things, we could give it protection from a color of our choice and get in for a free attack. I mean, you never quite know what you can do with those abilities given the moment in time. Thassa here, the beginning of upkeep, we scry 1, and then target creature control can't be blocked this turn. This kind of has me a little more intrigued than Thassa Deep Dwelling, but I think this could be interesting for sure. 2 mana to have a creature not be blocked. especially if we start having some big things in the air, or we start putting, all that glitters and that kind of thing on our creatures. This could become really important. We see Doomwake Giant there again. Spirited Companion, love the idea of it, but I think unfortunately in Commander we can find better 2-mana cantrips in these abilities. Erebos seems interesting. I'm just not sure on that one. Our opponent draws a card. Fate Unrevealed deals 1 damage to player. That could be interesting. Heliod God of Sun is a card that intrigues me. Other creatures you control have vigilance, and then for 4 mana we can put a token on the battlefield that's a cleric. This could be interesting because it gives us a constellation trigger for 4 mana if we run out of other cards. And then it is an enchantment, and it also gives all of our other creatures vigilance for 4 mana. So this is kind of interesting. Dockside Chef seems pretty cool. Comes down for 1 black, and then for 1 and a black we can sacrifice another creature to draw a card. I think if we're going to go the tokens route like I'm kind of considering, this could be pretty good to get us that benefit. The other Athreos, putting coin counters on things and getting them back, I'm not as interested in. Metallic Mimic could be interesting. The thing I'm looking for here is, does it copy its types, its card types? Copies exactly what is printed on the original creature unless that creature is copying something else or is a token. See below, except that it's also spirit. Does not copy where that creature is tapped or untapped. Oh, here you go. Most notably, if it copies a creature that's not normally a creature, it won't be a creature. Okay, so that's exactly why I wanted to know. But I think it's still worth it for the backside. Ghastly Mimicry says, at the beginning of your upkeep, create a token that's a creature, copy of enchanted creature, except it's a spirit in addition to its other type. This plays along with our Hallowed Haunting, but also I would happily take another copy of Grim Guardian or Doomwake Giant every turn. So I think this is still worth it. It can come down and copy one of our regular enchantment creatures. It could still come down and copy Doomwake Giant or copy one of those things. And I believe in that sense it would enter as an enchantment, but I could be wrong on that. But on the backside, it's just going to continue to make us more copies of whatever we choose. So I think this is going to be really good. It's also a spirit, which, like I said, plays into the Hallowed Haunting little sub-theme. All right. Nykthos Paragon definitely seems interesting. I just wish it didn't say once per turn. I think it'd be a lot better if it didn't say once per turn. Okay, Afara. As long as your devotion to white and blue is less than 7, it's not a creature at the beginning of each upkeep. If you had another creature enter the battlefield under your control last turn, draw a card. Okay, so Afara isn't hard to pay off. I think we would just have to push a little bit more into life gain, because the only way I can think of getting creatures efficiently is to things that make us tokens when we gain life or things like that. So I'm not quite sure on Afara. Phoenix is a cool idea, but I think I'm okay on that. Love the idea of the shrines. I just don't know that we can play enough of them to make the little shrine package work. So I think we're going to give up on that for now. Archetype of Courage seems like a great idea. All of our creatures have first strike, and our opponents can't have first strike. This is going to make blocking with Zer's Death Touch really important, so I really like that. Restoration of a Gonjo seems like a great idea, not only because it's an enchantment on the front side, which goes and gets us a basic plains, but when we flip it over, it's an enchantment creature that makes us spirit tokens, which again fits with our Hallowed Haunting, so that makes a ton of sense. Caliphate seems interesting, but again, I don't know how well I can pay that off. I don't like Countless Battles. Seems better if we're going into the auras. I don't know if we are. Michiko's is another one of our big potential win cons, kind of like All That Glitters, where we can just pump one of our creatures, and then this flips over into an enchantment creature that just gets buffed for how many enchantments we control. So this is another really cool piece of both a buff and a really big creature once that comes down. Archetype Finality we probably don't need, because I think Zer does the exact same thing but better, so I don't think we're real that worried about that. Nice Fleece Ram would gain us that life every turn, but I'm not as worried about that. Faithbound Judge is kind of interesting of a card. On its front side, you can defend with it, and then being your upkeep, you put a counter on it, and then as soon as it has 3 counters, it can attack. But on its backside, you basically pick a player. That player has 3 turns, and then it kills it, and then it would basically get exiled. So Faithbound Judge could be kind of interesting. The only thing that's kind of scares me about it is it's 7 mana to disturb. So I don't know how up I am on that. It seems kind of expensive, even though it is very good. Don't get me wrong. It just seems very expensive. This is a card that I've seen in Limited that seems kind of interesting, mainly for the backside. So it goes through the saga, return something to the hand, return an artifact card from your graveyard to your hand if you can't draw a card. So if we have no artifacts, it'll just draw us a card. But on the backside, it says whenever you cast a spell, your opponents can't cast spells with the same mana value as that spell until your next turn. The interesting part about this is that your most common counter spells in Commander are 2 and 3, right? Or 1, 2, and 3. So logic would say that as long as we can cast a 2 mana enchantment or a 3 mana enchantment during most of our turns, we would hopefully be able to completely shut off our opponents countering our spells. So I think this is kind of interesting. It's an interesting choice. I don't like how expensive it is on the front side, but I think once it gets to the back side, it seems like it could be really useful. So I'm interested to give this an honest shot. Hawken I don't really love. I know why it's here, but I don't know that I love it. Leeching Lurker seems interesting. The Fall of Khanda. I think I'm okay there. Dorothea is something I really like, though. Disturb it on the backside, and you make a 4/4 each combat. This is just something that comes down cheap. It disturbs cheap, and then gives us extra attackers. So I think Dorothy is a really good idea. Again, it also plays with Howled Haunting. I'm not going to go completely into this blue-white Disturbed Spirits game plan, but I will certainly cherry pick it and get the great things. Mischievous Catgeist gives a Curious Obsession type effect on the backside. That could be kind of interesting. Obika Raid is interesting, but we're not playing many vehicles, so I don't know how much good that's going to do us. I don't think we're going to draw enough cards for that one. Twin Blade Geist gives something Double Strike. Seems kind of interesting. Air of Enlightenment just turns into a 2/2 with First Strike on the back. I think we're probably past most of our really playable things. Yeah. Oh, Brine Comber could be interesting. If something will become the target of an aura spell. The Brine Comber might actually just come down to how many auras we play. So Brine Comber, I think, is worth considering. If we're playing a lot of aura spells, it's going to make us some extra spirits, which is going to just help us go even wider. Okay. Well, I think I'm happy there. I think we went through and I think we got a bunch of great choices. The thing that I already like about this list, just personally, is that although we're playing some similar things to my Alayla, deck, we get to play just a completely different play line in that we care more about the enchantments, like I said, whereas Alayla is kind of skirting the line between enchantments and artifacts, especially when you can play 0 mana artifacts, right, and get benefits. I think the cool thing about this deck is we can play those cheap Zercan animate the auras, but we can still play cheap auras to target Constellation. So I think we'll want to look into probably, not Dockside Extortionist. We'll want to probably look into some of the Umbras, maybe potentially as well as, protection for our creatures. We want God of the Sun. And then I think we want Heliod. Yeah, I think we want Sun. Both Helios at least, Heliods at least for now. Athreos. I'm going to be honest. I'm really glad that somebody shouted this one out. This is a commander that, like I said, I honestly was pretty excited to try. And in the moment now, I'm already kind of seeing my wheels turn at kind of where this can go. So I thank you so much. I think this is the kind of thing that makes you better deck builders when you have to try things, even if you're not, sometimes when you can't completely see the vision, it helps you with, understanding where you're going. Okay. All right, so let's get into some instants quick. Let's go through some of that, and then we'll go through some more enchantments I can think of off the top of my head, and then we'll go over EDH Rec. So I think we want to start with our tutor conversation. If you have not watched any Millzy Brews episodes in the past, I do play tutors because I own most of them. If you do not want to play tutors, I don't blame you. But what I'm going to do is tell you what I think is important. Enlightened Tutor and Idyllic Tutor are probably the two most important tutors you can play in this deck because they go get enchantments specifically. Demonic Tutor and Vampiric Tutor are both great because they go get any card, but they are going to be a little bit more expensive. Idyllic Tutor is a fairly cheap card to get as well. If you have a Diabolic Tutor laying around, use it. I'm not saying that you can't use it. I'm just saying I like to brew my decks in a little bit higher power level, so I don't mind going for Demonic Tutor and Vampiric Tutor because I own them, as well as I own an Idyllic Tutor and an Enlightened Tutor. Grim Tutor could be very good for this deck, as well as Profane Tutor, just because they both get you any card you could need. I think we want to play a few things for our EDH staples, Cyclonic Rift. I think we really want a couple counter spells. We'll throw like Fierce Guardianship in here for now. Let's throw in a Deadly Rollick because it's free if we control our commander. And then I think we really want something like Teferi's Protection if someone's going to bother to wipe our board. We want to be ready. And since we're opening up our creatures, our enchantments to become creatures, I think we really want something like Flawless Maneuver to really quickly give all of our creatures indestructible. Okay, as far as board wipes go, in these colors, I really like Supreme Verdict. Supreme Verdict is just one of those cards that can absolutely wipe a board and can't be countered. I like Dam. Dam's another one of my favorite board wipes in these colors. It can go a single target for 2 black or the whole board for 2 white. Farewell could be interesting, but I think that's all that I can think of off the top of my head. I think we're going to want probably some more things like Imprisoned in the Moon and Oubliette. And Darkseid Mutation. And these are enchantments that are going to come down and hurt something. So Darkseid Mutation turns it into a 0/1 insect with indestructible that loses all of the abilities. Imprisoned in the Moon makes a creature land or planeswalker into a colorless land. Oubliette just straight phases out a creature until Oubliette leaves the battlefield. Oubliette is particularly nasty for people's commanders because they do not go back in the command zone when they phase out. I could see something like Frogify being kind of good. Just turning something into a straight 1/1 for 2 mana, just losing all of its abilities. There's a couple of those abilities we can look at too. I have a feeling we'll see more of them when we go over to EDH Rec. I like a card like Mirror Maid coming in and copying an enchantment of our choice. The enchantment can't be legendary that we copy, but I doubt we're going to be playing very many of those. We also have Estrid's Invocation. The cool part about Estrid's Invocation is it does something very similar, but at the start of our upkeep, we can change it. And we can blink Esper's Evocation and come down as a copy of another thing. That I think there's also copy enchantment, right? For 2 in the blue, it comes in a copy of any other enchantment. So that could be kind of good. We can get double Hallowed Hauntings. We can get double whatever we need. So the cool part about these is they can actually come in as copies of auras. So let's say we have a Dark Sea, let's say we have like an Imprison the Moon on something, when we want another one, Mirror Maid can come down as a copy of another Imprison the Moon and lock something else down. So that's what I kind of do like about those copy enchantments are they kind of in a lot of ways allow us to have a kind of like a second copy of these enchantments. The other cool part about those is they can copy any of our creatures that are enchantments as well. So good. I like that. As far as lands go, let's get into a brief conversation about land bases here. I think for sure we want Command Tower. We'll probably play plenty of ways to search out this Rafine's Tower. One of my favorite utility lands for enchantment decks is Hall of Helios Generosity. For 1, we can tap it for a colorless mana, or for 1 and a white, we can tap it to put an enchantment card from our graveyard back on top of our library. So if one of our enchantments gets taken out, we can put it back on top. That just made me think that maybe we want not Reanimate, although Reanimate's great, but maybe Animate Dead. An enchantment that gets a creature back from our graveyard. Cool part about this is we can copy it with any of our copiers, so that could be good. And then maybe we throw a Reanimate in the sorcery lineup just in case one of our big creatures gets killed, and it's easier just to bring it back. Okay. So really quickly, I'll walk through my idea as far as lands go. So I always like to play the fetch lands and the shock lands. I know not everybody has access to fetch lands and shock lands, so if you don't, there's absolutely nothing wrong with playing basic lands. In the case of all of these, I think you can make basic land mana bases work. I just find more often than not, fetch lands go get you your tri-land quickly, which most of the time will fix your problems when it comes to mana base issues. So we added our fetch lands, so we need our shock lands. We have Hallowed Fountain. We have Godless Shrine. We have Watery Grave. Okay. After my shock lands, normally I like, because we're always going to be probably fetching for our Triome, I really like the check lands. The check lands were from both Dominaria and Ixalan, and they say it comes in the battlefield tapped unless you control a blank land type or a blank land type. So Drowned Catacomb is blue-black, Isolated Chapel is white-black, and then Glacial Fortress is blue-white. The other reason I like these is even if let's say we have Rafine Tower, we have a shock land in our opening hand. Let's say we have the Rafine's Tower in our opening hand, and so we end up tutoring for another land. That means most of the time these are going to come down still probably untapped. Next, I really like the new slow lands from Innistrad. They come in tapped unless you control 2 or more island lands. We have Deserted Beach. We have Shattered Sanctum. And then we have Sunken Ruins. No, not Sunken Ruins. That's the filter land. We have Shipwreck Marsh. That's what it is. But that adds me into my next lands that I like to consider, especially in non-green decks, which is our filter lands. Filter lands allow us to put 1 color in and get any combination of those 2 colors out. So we have Sunken Ruins. We have Fetid Heath. And then in this color combination, we have Mystic Gate. Okay. Really quickly on the fetch lands, because someone's going to say, Millzy, you can run a couple more fetch lands, because The fetch lands don't technically have color identity, so you could play as many that fit searching either one of your land types. I don't like to do that. I just like to play my 3 fetch lands that are in my 3 color types, and most of the time I'm not playing enough typed lands to warrant playing the 6th I think technically I could play. So that's okay. I don't ever do it, but I can understand why people would. Okay. Check lands, filter lands. There's a lot of ways we can go from here. The one that I really like from here are, do we want to play because we're not in green? Do we want to play things like a City of Brass or Reflecting Pool? A Reflecting Pool just taps for anything. Weave can tap for. City of Brass taps for any color. We could play like Exotic Orchard, which is going to tap for any color our opponents could produce. I'd be very intrigued if we ever sat down at a table where someone wasn't playing, one of our colors. So Exotic Orchard, more often than not, is going to tap for everything. That's all I can think of off the top of my head. Again, I'll probably let EDH Rec help me out here and bail me out as far as more land choices go. But okay. We have thought up our ideas. We've talked about our strategy. We've thought about kind of what we want to see from our enchantments and our creatures, and we've put a few pieces in. We're still missing some removal, but that's okay. That's something that EDH Rec can help us fill in and make me look a little bit better. No, I'm just kidding. It's something we can fill in and kind of decide as we go along. But okay, let's rock on over to EDH Rec. EDH Rec is the best deck building resource when it comes to the commander format. You can find your commander and it will give you cards you should play. Here we're going to make sure we pick enchantments. We want to make sure for the theme here in the drop down, we want to make sure that we're picking the right theme. Here you can choose your choice of budget, which is really cool. And if you click this right here, you can go to one of these different deck building resources and it will show you decks that these people have. So that's pretty cool with your commanders. That's cool if you want to go see what other people are rocking with. All right, so enchantments, let's rock through it. Let's see what we got. First up, Vexilus Praetor. Commanders neutral at protection from everything. Makes sense, but I think I'm probably going to go another way on that one. I like it. I see the idea of it, but I think I'm good. Sten, Paranoid Partisan. When it comes in, we get to reduce the spell of our choice by 1. I think this is going to be pretty darn good. Just coming in, reducing all of our enchantments by 1. That seems really good. Exchange of Words. Yeah, I could see why that'd be good. But Plaza Heroes. Does Plaza Heroes make sense? How many legendary things are we playing? Honestly, a decent amount of our enchantment creatures are legendary. So I think Plaza Heroes makes a lot more sense. As soon as Zer's out, we can tap for any color. We can tap for any color to cast legendary spells, and then for 3 and to tap it and sack it, we can protect a creature with it. Facing of Zhalfir definitely seems interesting, as it's a board wipe, and we get to phase things out in the process. Kind of interesting. We'll come back to that. Okay, yeah, the Enchantresses were something I totally forgot about, but that makes a ton of sense. Mesa Enchantress is going to draw us a card whenever we play. Is it just whenever an enchantment comes in? Whenever you cast an enchantment spell, draw a card. So that's going to become really important. We see the archetypes. We see Doomwake. We see Empty Throne. Sphere of Safety makes a ton of sense. Not only is it a big thing, but it stops people from attacking us. Really quickly on cards like Propaganda and Sphere of Safety. A lot of Commander content creators are going to say, oh, well, they're great at low power tables, but they're bad at high power tables. Or I'm talking about Ghostly Prison and things like that. Okay, sure. Yes, as you get up into the high powered stuff, Sphere of Safety is not going to be a problem. especially when people are making unlimited mana and that kind of thing. But I think Sphere of Safety more often than not is going to do us good in stopping our opponents from attacking, and for that reason, I am going to throw it in. Totally forgot about the other Zur. The other Zur makes a ton of sense, especially when a lot of our enchantments are really cheap. All Zur has to do is attack, and then we get to go get an enchantment with 3 or less, put it on the battlefield. Cool part here is a lot of our removal enchantments are less than 3, so we can go ahead and get those and get them ready to go. The other cool part is if we wanted to go get an all that glitters or something like that and attach it to Zur or attach it to another creature, we can do that as well. So Zur becomes really important. Zur is also a very popular commander in its own right, but I think I like the benefit of the enchantment creatures more than I like this search. So, but I think Zur plays a great support role. Starfield Mystic, making everything cost less and putting counters on it when we cast, or when enchantments go into the graveyard from the battlefield. I'm not sure how often we're going to be able to pay this off. If it was like Setessan Champion, where it gets like a +1/+1 counter when we cast or when we enter the battlefield, I think we're talking about a completely different thing. But I don't know that I love Starfield Mystic as much. Starfield and Nyx does a very similar thing to Zur. The only problem here is that we lose some of the hexproof protection of Zur, but this is kind of a second copy of our commander, which could be important if we already have so many to begin with. And then Extinguish All Hope, board wipe to get rid of all non-enchantment creatures. I feel like that's going to become really important as well. Okay, top cards, Ghostly Prison, Propaganda. I mean, it makes a lot of sense, right? We want to protect ourselves because we're going to be trying to build up our board. So that makes a ton of sense. We see the God of the Sun. They're in the same idea as us, making enchantment creatures and giving everything vigilance, Smothering Tithe. Dance of the Manse seems like an interesting idea, bringing X cards back from our graveyard to the battlefield. They have to be non-aura, though, and then if X is 6 or more, they become 4/4 creatures in addition to their types. This is great. Instead of playing like a Resurgent Belief, this is going to allow us to bring a bunch of things back. Sword of Plowshares, we hadn't got into the removal yet, but yep, that makes a lot of sense. Enchanted Evening, all permanents are enchantments in addition to their type. Oh, this seems like a trap. It seems really good, but it also seems like a trap. Does this work to our benefit, though? Yes, though, right? Sorry, I apologize. No. I worded that wrong. It's great for us, but if our opponents have anything that care about enchantments, this could be bad. Like this plus Extinguish All Hope doesn't work, right? Because everything becomes enchantments. If this said all of our permanents are enchantments, would it change my mind? I think this is a card we just have to play, and we have to see if it makes a difference. If it's something that if we play this deck out and it ends up hurting us too often, then maybe we cut it. But I think I like where they're going. Everything becomes an enchantment. It was Zur out. Everything has hexproof. So I see where they're going with it. I think I've now talked myself into reason, and I understand. Yes, I think it's worth playing. Erebos getting played in a lot of decks solely to stop our opponents from gaining life. Yeah, I see it. I just don't know that I see it. Like, I get it, but I don't know that I want it in my list. And I hope that you understand and feel like that's okay. Okay, Hana, Ship's Navigator, bringing enchantments from your graveyard to your hand. That could be pretty good. I will happily throw Alayla into this deck to get us those fairies with flying. For each enchantment we play, I feel like we do not want to turn down. We don't want to turn down those when we can get them. Same thing with something like Daxos. Whenever we cast enchantment spells, we get a counter on it, and then for 3 mana we can make a spirit token, which remember Hallowed Haunting already cares about, and it's equal to the number of experience counters we have. I think the argument for Daxos is like, well, if we get it late game, it's useless. But if we get it early game, then it's really good. And I think I'm willing to take that over-under on Daxos. Runetail, Kitsune, and Senate seem interesting. If you have 30 more life, flip it. And when you flip it, prevent all combat damage that would be dealt to creatures you control. This seems like a slam dunk Mostly because once you flip it, it's an enchantment. So we then could animate it with Zur. It would be a 3/3, and then we would basically have a free Dolmen Gate type ability. So I think that seems like a really, really, really good idea. Johnny's Chosen. Again, I like the idea. I think we have enchantments, though, that can do some... We haven't even gotten into, like, enchantments like Luminarch Ascension that can just make us tokens and protect us if need be. Tameshi says, whenever one or more non-creature permanents are returned to hand, draw a card. Return a land you control to its owner's hand. Return target artifact or enchantment with mana value X or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. Activate only as a sorcery. Eek. Like, I see it, but I'm good. I'm good on that. We see a couple more copy creatures in, like, Clever Impersonator. I think we probably jam, like, the Sakashima in here. Of 1,000 Faces. We probably jam that in here to copy Heliod or copy Zur or copy anything else. That makes some good sense. Okay, let's add these in here before we keep adding more things in. We have Propaganda. I just feel like with Ghostly Prison, Propaganda, and Sphere of Light, Sphere of Safety, sorry. Jeez, I'm losing my brain. Once Zur's out, giving them hexproof is going to probably fix most of the problems of them, because then they're not going to be removable by single target removal. Which I think is going to be the thing that is the most threatening to a lot of our cards, because single target removal, especially on enchantments or artifacts, those enchantment type removals, is going to take out a lot of our important stuff. If we can get Zur out and give them hexproof, that's one layer of something they have to get through, right, to get to our permanents. So I think that makes a ton of sense. Enchanted Evening. Again, I will jam a Layla into any Esper deck that can play it. Sue me. I love it. It's one of my favorite commanders, and I think it's such a cool support card as well, because I think it just absolutely fits what we're trying to do. Runetail makes a ton of sense. Again, Starfield of Nyx, I think it is a card that it gets me excited, but it also has me slightly worried, because if we don't have the protection, making all of our enchantments into creatures seems like it could hurt us. But then again, on that turn where we have a bunch of things out, we literally just Sphere Safety, turn everything into a creature, and swing for game. So I can definitely see the benefit, right? I can see both sides of the coin here for sure. It's not a matter of me not understanding its use case. It's just, I think it's one of those cards you have to be desperately careful when you use it. Because I think there's going to be those turns where you think it's good to use it, and you just get your butt handed to you. All right, Path to Exile. I like Void Rend. It can hit anything. I like Anguished Unmaking. Again, removal that can hit anything becomes the most important, because it's the easiest to use. Counterspell and Dovin's Veto seem like a really cool idea. How often are we going to have double blue in this deck? I think Dovin's Veto might be easier to play, because we might more often have 2 colors up than just 1 color, 2 of 1 color. But both really great cards, I guess you could argue. The reason you want either of these, I guess the reason you'd want Counterspell over Dovin's Veto is that it literally counters anything. So maybe that's my argument to get myself back into Counterspell. Arcane Denial would do the same thing, except draw us a card. Fracture gets rid of artifacts, enchantments. That D-Spark gets rid of anything 4 or higher. D-Spark seems really good, especially when it comes to getting a pesky permanents. I think we still want the Brainstorm. We're going to still need the card draw. We're going to still need to get there, right? So, yeah. Obscure Charm, getting back multicolored permanent seems interesting. Malakir Rebirth, saving a creature or coming down as a land could be interesting. Let's go into sorceries. We see Dam and Supreme Verdict there. Brilliant Restoration seems really good. Resurgent Belief also seems really good. I think I like Resurgent Belief a little more. It's just a little bit cheaper. This is kind of that Dance of the Manse conversation where is this better or is Dance of the Manse better? I think I still like Resurgent Belief better, but that's a conversation we can have a little bit. We see the D-Tutor. We see Open the Vaults. The only reason I kind of want to avoid Open the Vaults is I do not want to give my opponents their things back. As much as I want to say, oh, you know, we want to avoid artifacts, I feel like we're going to end up needing them. We're going to end up needing some mana rocks. So as much as I don't want to use them, I feel like we're going to end up needing them. So I probably won't use any of these guys, although Helm of the Gods seems pretty good to give something +1/+1 for each enchantment we control. But we also have All That Glitters. We also have Ethereal Armor. We also have a couple other ones to do that. So maybe we don't need Helm of the Gods for that. Okay, let's go down into the enchantments. Let's see what we missed. Phyrexian Arena seems like it makes a ton of sense. Draw that extra card. I think we're good, though. Reconnaissance Mission could make more sense. Whenever creature you can go to a combat damage player, you can draw a card. That seems like it makes more sense if we're going to try to make these fun tokens and swing them around. Reconnaissance Missions could do us a ton of good. Oh, Sanguine Bond actually makes a ton of sense. Zerg giving all of our creatures lifelink means that Sanguine Bond is going to do a lot of fun. Do we add the Exquisite Blood in there for the combo? Probably. I think we probably do. So we see Michigos, we see Estrids, Grasp of Fate. I definitely want Blind Obedience, having our opponent's things come and tapped. I definitely want Authority of the Consuls. Again, having our opponent's things come and tapped is a really good thing, especially when we can gain a life. Man, I love the idea of Shark Typhoon, especially because that's 6 to reanimate with Zur, and we get a XX Shark every time we cast non-creature spell. Again, this is one of those payoffs for enchantments that I think for anything we play, that could be really good. It's going to be a little more expensive to get down, but I think it fits us really well once it does. We see All That Glitters. We see Ethereal Absolution, which seems cool, but there are flat buffs that do a lot better for cheaper mana. Brave of the Sands, giving all of our creatures vigilance, seems like it could be really good. We see Oubliette. Legion's Loyalty seems pretty fun. Let me think about Legion's Loyalty for a second. Oh, it's 8 mana. Only thing that scares me away from Legion's Loyalty is that it's 8 mana. 8 mana is a lot of mana. It's so much mana. I want to jam it in there so bad, but it's 8 mana, and I don't know that I can justify 8 mana in this deck. I feel like we're going to have it there. I have a lot easier time arguing for something like Extravagant Replication, because at the beginning of our upkeep, we just make copies of our mana rocks or things like that. I think I have a lot easier time arguing for this than I do Legion's Loyalty, and I still don't even think I could fit this in. Court of Grace getting us the Spirit makes a ton of sense if we're going to play the Hallowed Haunting, but I think we are going to run into the problem of having too many slots. Exquisite Blood I think is worth considering if we're going to play Sanguine Bone. The cool part about this is anytime we deal damage to our opponents, we just gain life, and this still works with Heliod, right? This still works with all of the other random small things we have. I want to love Monologue Tax. I want to love this card so much, but I've never seen it work, and so I'm a little bit more down on it than most people. We see the Copy Enchantment. Would love to make Omniscience work. I just don't see it working. Monastery Siege seems kind of interesting. Curator's Ward seems interesting. Giving our commander Hexproof could be interesting for sure, but I also feel like we have other ways to do that. Okay, let's add our cards in here. I think we're getting almost there. It's just it's our conversation about mana rocks now. I think we would be absolutely stupid to not pay mana rocks, right? We'd be dumb, right? We need them, right? We're not in green, and we need them for the mana ramp, right? Because we're not in green. But so much of me wants to play Stony Silence just to do that little bit to hurt our opponents. But I think we could also play both, right? How many times are we going to get into having Stony Silence? How many times are we going to get into having Stony Silence and treasures at the same time, or in our mana rocks at the same time? Okay, well then that's my only kind of. Pardon me. That's my only qualm. Is if I play Stony Silence, I almost feel like I can't play Mana Rocks, because if I ever see Stony Silence, or if I ever need to search up Stony Silence, it screws me. But then on the other hand, if I can get Zur, I can search up as many enchantments as I want, and then I can go get it if I need it. So you see kind of the dichotomy here. Do we open ourselves up to it? Oh man, I don't know. That's something I'm gonna have to keep kicking around in the back of my head. I think this is the decision point. Do I think I can survive without any mana artifacts? We don't have that much card draw. Yeah, I think we're gonna have to at least play 5 or 6. I don't think we can get away with it. Okay, Sierra Sanctum. Would love to play it, but I cannot. Just say it'd be the same thing as Gaia's Cradle. I can't justify putting one in the deck. I own a proxy copy of one, but I cannot justify, telling you to put a $350 card in your deck. Otawara will happily throw in. I will throw the Ancient. No, I don't think we need Ancient Tomb at this point. We do want Urza's Saga though, and we're gonna kind of spit some mud in the face of that in a second when I add a crypt into this deck. But I could see someone in the comments saying, "Oh, no Ancient Tomb, but you play crypt." Yeah, I get it. I get it. I understand. Everyone's a hypocrite if we're all honest about it. Okay, Arcane Signet, Soul Ring, yes. I think we really want the talismans. We probably really want at least some of the signets. No mana crypt even anywhere, which makes sense. We're playing a lot more of the colored permanents than we are anything else. So honestly, Urza's Saga might even have to come out if Soul Ring's the only one mana rock thing where only one CMZ artifact or enchantment or artifact. Sorry, that we're playing. Urza's Saga might actually have to come back out. We'll talk about that. We'll talk about that in a second. The 3 talismans. I could see us not playing the Dimir Signet and trying to keep ourselves in the white since most of our enchantments are white. I feel like if we go down here and look, white is overwhelmingly the pip in our deck, the most amount of pips in our deck. So Decanter has me interested, but okay, let's go down here. Okay, I love the idea of Arcane Sanctum. Love the idea of the cards. I think they're great lands. I just have never found success with them. So I'm not gonna play Arcane Sanctum, but I think it's a good land. I think Exotic Orchard fits the bill. Totally forgot about these. How could I forget about those? Oh, I feel so dumb. Sea of Clouds, Vault of Champions, and Morphic Pool. Our commander lands come in tapped unless we have 2 or more opponents. Man, I can't believe I forgot those. Just goes to show you how much you think you're up on your stuff until you do this off the top of your head. I like the idea of like Caves of Koilos and a Darkar Wastes because they both fit in our white theme and they give us access to those colors. Prairie Stream is going to come down to how many... Prairie Stream and Sunken Hollow are going to come down to how many basic lands we play. And we're kind of getting pressed out of the amount of basic lands we're actually going to play, so they may not actually do us that much good. We could play the Pathways. That is always an option. We could play the bounce lands there. That is always an option. Okay, let's add in. Whoa, actually, wait a second. If we're playing Restoration of a Ganjo, that actually gets a basic plains, doesn't it? It does. So maybe we do want to put in like 3 basic plains, and then we can play like a Fabled Passage as well. Fabled Passage gets a basic land, comes in untapped if we have 4 more lands. We could put in a couple basic plains for that, and then maybe any other effects. Okay, I like it. We're gonna throw in the Arcane Signet. I think for me, Arcane Signet more often of the time is in a 2-color plus deck is more often an auto include than Soul Ring for me. But I understand why people really why Soul Ring. I mean, Soul Ring is a staple at the end of the day. I just more often for me, I find myself playing the Arcane Signet over the Soul Ring in certain in like monocolored decks or decks that use a lot more mana pips as opposed to colorless mana. I can understand why someone would go for the that. All right, so I think we'll add those signets that give us white. I don't think we need the Dimir Signet. 7 mana artifact's going to be enough. Fel Warstones just seems like a great idea. More often than not, we're going to be playing against someone who has these 3 colors. Like, I think it would be ludicrous to sit down at a table and not hit somebody who's playing these 3 colors. So I think that makes a ton of sense. Also, can I just say, love that all of these are available in the old frame. I know there's going to be someone out there who doesn't agree with me, but that's okay. I love that they fit that frame. Maybe we up our planes count by a couple. Okay. Well, I think that goes through all of our EDH Rec stuff. Okay, so here we go, guys. We're gonna cut it down, and we're gonna ship it. Do we end up getting enough removal? Plowshares, Exile, Deadly Rollick, D-Spark, and then Void Rend getting anything. Yeah, I think we have enough single target removal. We also have a ton of single target removal on enchantments for creatures, so we don't need technically as much. So maybe we can even probably even maybe cut a piece of removal. All right, 119. Let's go to the sorceries first. I'm thinking about cutting Dance the Manse for Resurgent Belief. I feel like we don't need both of them. We can search them. We do a bunch of tutors, so we won't necessarily need both of them. But I think more often than not, this is going to do us more good than this. Only 2 mana is needed for this to get everything back. We would need a bunch of mana to this to get everything back. Extinguish All Hope just seems really good. It is a non-bow with Enchanted Evening, but I think that's something we can play around. Damn and Supreme Verdict for our board wipes seems very good. Oh, that's right. We have Anguish Unmaking to hit anything. I might even half consider cutting like swords. We have Path, we have Deadly Rollick, and we have all these enchantments that hit them. Counterspell, Cycryph, Deadly Rollick, D-Spark. It feels like sacrilege to cut this counterspell, but I'm going to. I just don't find myself personally running as many counterspells. If you really want that counterspell in, we would throw it back in, but for me, I think we're already playing too many non-enchantments as it is, and I have a feeling that we're going to end up cutting something else, and so I'd rather keep Fierce Guardianship, because as soon as I get Zur out, this Fluidless Maneuver, and Deadly Rollick are all free, so it just makes more sense to me. Okay, let's go through our creatures. We probably need to cut a couple down. I want to keep our enchantment count as high as we can. Alayla makes a ton of sense. It gives us those tokens, but I think the argument could be made that it might not do enough, but I hope that it does. Like, I love Archetype of Imagination because it gives everything flying, but I feel like the 6 mana could be too much, so I think I'm going to kind of cut it for now. Courage, the first strikes could like that. I mean, I even like Athreos, but I guess, you could argue it could be cut, but it is 3 mana. Brine Comer, I think, is going to come out. I think more often than not, we won't have enough artifacts or enough auras to really make it worth it, because remember, on the backside, Brine Comer says that creature has to become the target of an aura spell. Daxos, I kind of wonder if Daxos the Return was maybe too good to be true, even though it makes those spirits, and I feel like those spirits are important to Hallowed Haunting, and I feel like Hallowed Haunting is one of our win cons. Oh, man. The other Daxos just pairs really well with Heliod, and if we get into that Heliod playline, I feel like we want it. Dockside Chef is card draw, and really cheap card draw at that. Doomwake, Dorothea. I just really like Dorothea because the backside makes those spirits, and it's just really cheap to disturb out. Guardian, I like both. The Heliod's, I love Catilda. I love Mason Enchantress. Maybe we try to take out Mirror Hall Mimic for now. The Enchantress, Thermage. Oh, I forgot that one can be copied into something else. Runetail, Sakashima. Maybe it's like Thassa, but see, Thassa seems really good as well. But I kind of want to make room for more enchantments. I think the problem is, if the more of these we keep, the less of these just genuinely good enchantments that we have that we're then going to have to cut. I don't want to cut any of the mana artifacts. We really need them. So I guess let's go through the enchantments. We're at 112, and I really want to keep this enchantment number really high. But I guess I have to remember that a lot of our creatures are enchantments as well. I guess I just feel like Zur could make... I think my problem is, I think so too much of my head's going into I want more enchantments because we can make them creatures, but then I have to remember that just having an enchantment creature on the battlefield gets the benefit from Zur. But in my head, I'm like, I gotta play all these mana. I gotta play all these artifacts that make them. I gotta play all these enchantments to make them creatures. But I think I'm forgetting that, these enchantment creatures just get these abilities right away. So I think I'm kind of forgetting about that a little bit in my head, and I need to kind of take that into account. Sten just seems really good, reducing everything by 1. Dorothea might even be the odd card out here, as much as I love it. I love the backside so much. You put it on a creature, you attack with it. Maybe I'm crazy there, but also maybe I'll miss it. I don't know. That's what I think we're gonna have to do. We're gonna have to cut these 11 cards, and we're gonna have to test this deck and figure out if we cut the wrong cards. But this is a deck I definitely plan on testing. This seems like a ton of fun. This seems like really up my alley. I looked at the other Zur for a while, but as soon as I saw this, I said, if I'm building Esper enchantments, I'm building Zur. Okay, let's rock through it. All the glitters, yes. Animate Dead, yes. Authority, yes. Connections, yes. Blind Obedience, yes. The Copy enchantment, Dark Steel, Enchanted Evening. Astra's Ethereal Armor, Exquisite Blood. Did we cut the combo? I almost feel like Sanguine Bond could be enough on its own with giving all of our enchantment creatures lifelinks. Maybe we do that. Let's cut Frogify for now. I think we have plenty of removal. Ghostly Prison. I don't think we need Ghostly Prison and Propaganda, so I'm going to cut the Propaganda. I think Sphere of Safety is good enough on its own. Haunting, yes. Imprisoned, yes. I like the idea of the iteration so much. On that page, where was the iteration at? Sorry if you can hear that pinging sound. Yeah, maybe it's not as good as I want it to be. 107. Michiko's, yes. Mirror Maid, Oubliette. Reconnaissance Mission just seems really good, especially if we're going to be smacking with these creatures and drawing us cards. It feels like it's really important, but I also feel like at the same time, we need something else in that slot. Shark Typhoon, Sigil, Smothering Tithe, Sphere of Safety, Starfield and Nyx, Stony Silence, Restoration of Maganja. We're down to 106. Oh my gosh. Guys, I don't know what to do. I do not know what to do. There's so many good cards in this deck. I feel like I can make an argument for all of our enchantments. All of them are just really good. So maybe we need to make the argument for something else. I really like D-Spark, but we have a lot of other things that can hit everything that D-Spark can hit. So maybe D-Spark comes out. We have Animate Dead, so maybe Reanimate comes out. Animate Dead can also be copied with Copy Enchantment or something like that. So maybe that's an argument for it coming out. I think we gotta keep the mana rocks. We really, really need them. The only argument for keeping those mana rocks in is we could place something like Nettle Cyst if we're gonna keep some of the artifacts in. Like Nettle Cyst or Cranial Plating that give that +1/+1 for each of the things we control. I know I just added a card, but I think Nettle Cyst works really well. Maybe it's something we throw in the sideboard and determine later if it's something we really need. All right, 4 cards. I really like that. I really like Daxos the Returned, especially in the early game. If we can slam this down in the early game, it feels really good. My gut almost tells me it's a Layla, but my heart wants me to keep it in there. Just for the benefit, just for the good benefit. Dockside Giant, I'm crazy to cut Dockside Chef, right? It's a draw outlet. We're gonna have these tokens laying around. We're gonna have other things. I feel like we want that card draw. I just realized that I forgot to add Luminarch Ascension, the thing that can make angels for 2 mana. I forgot to add that in there. I feel like that's going to become really important to help us out. Okay, so we're cutting Dockside Chef, even though I feel like I'm going to regret that. But again, I feel like we have to get it down to 100, and then we have to go test, right? At the end of the day, it's easy to say what makes the list good on paper, but sometimes you need to actually test it out to know what's good and what's bad. Ooh, Sakashima it feels too good because it can copy literally anything else. But is it taking a slot away from something else that's really important? Maybe we throw it away over there for now. I love the idea of copying like Zur the Enchanter with it, or copying something else and kind of farming that value. Now it comes back in. See, this is the problem, is every time I look at a card and go, I don't need that, I'm like, but do I need it? Archetype of Courage just gives all of our creatures first strike, and that helps so much when we're going for the tokens. Runetail seems really good. I guess you could argue for Thermage, but becoming the copy of another target creature could make it any other non-legendary creature, especially something like Doomwig Giant. So basically, it just draws us that card. Love Catilda, love the Heliads. Man, I'm in a lot of trouble here. I like the Aganjo because it can get us the land. Man, I'm having a really tough time here. I'm having a really tough time deciding. I can think of like 4 cards, but the problem is I can also think of other cards that are just as important. The tough part is deciding. So here's what I think we got to do. This is where I feel like I get to every time I do one of these videos. We got to cut the 4 cards and we got to go with it. What other choice do we have, right? We got to cut the cards and we got to test, right? That's the only thing we can do. I am going to cut Dam for Extinguish All Hope. I know that Dam is cheaper, but Extinguish All Hope gives us that benefit. I think all my instants look good. We need 3. I'm going to cut this Dakthos. I love the life gain, and I think it pairs up so well with Heliod, but I feel like the other Daxos does more. Brings us down to 102. I sold myself on like Falwar Stone, but maybe I just need to cut it. Maybe I need to really value our other. We need to value our other enchantments a little bit more. Make sure that we have kind of more of that critical mass of enchantments. Sten, I have a tough time cutting because it's going to help us diminish down some of our costs. So I think my last cut. My last guy, I really don't want to cut Alayla, but she seems like she could be it. But again, we're playing so many enchantments, and it just helps, and really just helps our case. It helps our goals. Athreos just seems really good because it's 3 mana. Again, it's another enchantment that comes down. We can get it off of. We can get it off of Zur. We can get it off lots of other things. I don't want to just scrap it. Again, I want to keep Stony Silence. I think it more than often it's going to do us good. So I think in this scenario, my last cut to get down to 100 and to ship this bad boy and to test it out, I think I will cut Daxos the Returned. And if we find maybe a better, maybe this is one of the cards on our short list of cards to try to bring back in, and really consider if the deck does what we want it to do. But all right, we got there. We got to 100. That was one of the toughest cuts I think I've ever had on Millzy Brews. But that just goes to show you how good of a deck I think this is and how fun it's going to be to play. There we go, guys. Zur Enchantments. Thank you so much for watching. Please like, subscribe, comment down below what commander you'd like to see next. We are about a week away from when I can start brewing around Brothers War, and I'm very excited. I already have some commanders on my short list, including a few more Azorius and Esper commanders, but that's okay. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will catch you next time.